Hello, my name is Nicolaas and welcome to Meeplecare. Today I would like to show you how to set up and play Quacks of Quedlinburg the Duel. This is of course a two-player game for players ages 10 and up that plays in about 45 to 60 minutes. The game is designed by Wolfgang Warsch and published by 999 Games. During this playthrough you might notice that I'm using a Dutch copy of the game. That's because at the moment of this recording there is no English edition. So it's possible that I might be using different terms for game components or phases because at this time there's no English rulebook available. However, I'm confident that I will be able to teach you how to set up and play. Now, before we go to brew our potions, I would kindly ask you to hit the like and subscribe button.
Welcome to the marketplace of Quedlinburg. You and another player are two quacks vying for the attention of the public. You want to convince patients that only you can brew them the best potions to cure them of all their ailments. For each patient that you treat, your prestige within the Quacks Guild Hall will increase. So there's much at stake here today, because if you have treated the most patients, you will become the guild's new guild master. Let's start by setting up the game by following these steps. Place the marketplace board in the middle of the table, between you and your opponent, so that each player is facing a colored corner of the board. Now you will place the ingredient books on the table so that both players can clearly see them. These books will show you how much the ingredients cost and what effect they have when you add them to your potion. In the box you will find 15 ingredient books. 3 of them are used during every game: pumpkin, lead and firecrackers. So you can start by placing these next to the game board. The other 12 books are double-sided and they belong to one of 4 possible sets. Each set has its own numbered seal with a Roman numeral from 1 to 4. Each set consists of 6 books, and each book in a set is designed to work best with the other books in that set. So when picking a set of books to play with, it's advised to use all books of one set instead of mixing books from different sets together. For your first game, you should use all ingredient books that belong to the set with the number 1 seal. Normally I would place the books like this, so that each player can read them, but for this how to play video I will place them horizontally, so that everything stays visible on camera. Next, take all ingredients from the box. Since all ingredients are represented in the game by these colored chips, I will also be calling them like this for the rest of the video. Whenever a rule specifies colored chips, this means all colored ingredients except the white firecracker chips. First, place the black, white and orange chips next to their matching ingredient book. Then, place all other colored chips in 3 piles. One pile containing all the chips with a value of 1, another pile with the value 2 chips, and complete this part of setup by creating a pile with the value 4 chips. These are the round cards. There are 22 of these cards, and for your first game you will use the cards numbered 1 to 6 and also the last round card that has the number 7 on it. You can see each card's number in the bottom left corner. Now you make a face-up stack using these 7 cards. You place the number 7 card, the card for the last round, on the table, and you place the other cards on top in descending order, completing the stack with the number 1 card on top. During later games you can pick the top 6 cards at random to create this stack, but you will always place this last round card, the number 7 card, on the bottom of the stack. Next to this stack you place these 5 markers: 3 upgrade chips for your black ingredient and 2 value 1 gold pieces. For your first game you will place the silver and the gold coin near the well on the game board. The copper coin goes back into the box, but during later games you can choose which 2 of these 3 coins you will use. Take the 2 market stalls and place them on the starting space of their matching color. This is one of the 11 patients that await your treatment. It will be your goal to convince them that you are the best quack to cure them. During setup, you place these patients on the park spot in the middle of the game board. This other wooden piece is the mayor. You will not be using her for your first game, but at the end of these rules I will teach you how you can integrate her into your game. Place the 25 gold pieces and the 5 gold pieces with a value of 5 within reach of both players. Each player is now facing one corner of the market, and each corner has a specific color. To continue with setup, you each take the flask that matches your color and you place it in front of you. Each flask has a bottleneck where you can place up to 3 ingredients and a body. Between turns, you will move ingredients from the bottleneck to the body of the flask. On the bottom of the flask there is a track with spaces for your white firecracker chips. These spaces are explosion spaces. Whenever you will have to place one of these white chips on one of these explosion spaces, your potion will explode. During the game, the rules, or ingredient books or other game components, will sometimes ask you to look at a specific part of your flask. When no part is specified, you will see this symbol. This means that I can look in my complete flask. This ingredient, on the other hand, wants me to look for blue ingredients, for blue chips, in the bottleneck of my flask, while this round card allows me to take a special action with colored chips from the body of my flask. Now, to finish setup, each player takes a bag and places a number of chips in his bag. On the board, you can see which chips you need to fill up your bag at the start of the game. You need 1 blue and 1 orange value 1 chip, 4 value 1, 2 value 2 and 1 value 3 white chips, and 2 value 2 and 3 value 1 black chips. On page 3 of the rulebook you can find a summary of all ingredients and their value and quantity in the game. Quacks of Quedlinburg is called a bag building game. Both players start the game with the exact same amount of chips, all with the same value and color. During the game, you will draw chips from your bag to perform different actions. This mechanism is called bag building because you will be buying new ingredient chips to add to your bag. Ingredients of different colors and values that will provide you with more and better actions. And with the help of upgrades, you will even be able to replace and remove less valuable chips and put some higher value chips inside your bag, making future turns more and more exciting. So even if you start with the same ingredients, at the end of the game, the content of each player's bag will be totally different. During the game, patients will move along a track that runs between you and your opponent's market stall. You both try to convince each patient that you are the best quack in town, most capable of treating their illness. Whenever a patient has reached your market stall, he will let you treat him and you can place him on this track. You will try to treat as much patients as you can over a number of rounds. The game can end in one of 2 ways. The game ends immediately when one of the players has treated his 6th patient, or at the end of the 7th round. In both cases, the player who treated the most patients will win. Each round is divided into 6 phases. You can find a handy reminder of these phases on the marketplace board. You start the round by flipping the coins. Then it's time to brew your potion. The 3rd phase is the aftermath phase, in which some special ingredients are activated. This phase is followed by the market surveillance phase, after which you can buy new ingredients. You then proceed to the end of the round. Let's take a look at each of these 6 phases in more detail. First, you will pick a starting player. This will be the player who most recently heard a loud bang. The other player takes 1 gold piece to start the game. During the first phase of the game, the starting player takes the 2 coins that you placed on the well during setup and flips them in the air. He then chooses one of these 2 coins and gives the other coin to his opponent. You now both take the bonus that you can find on your coin. During later rounds, the player who will flip the coins and pick first will be the player who is behind. I will show you how this works and explain all the benefits on the coins when we arrive at the end of the round phase and you know how to play the game. I see that your patients are getting a little bit nervous, so I think it's time to start brewing those potions. This phase consists of multiple turns that you use to brew your potion. You and your opponent will alternate turns. The player who tossed the coins during phase 1 of the round is also the player who takes the first turn. During your first turn, you will draw chips from your bag, one after the other, and you will place each chip on the bottleneck of your flask. You don't have to end your turn after you drew one chip. You can draw multiple chips before your opponent takes his turn. Now, how do you place each chip that you draw in your flask? If it's a color chip, you will place it on a free spot in your bottleneck. That chip is now considered to be in your flask. Then you immediately perform the action of that chip. You can find a chip's action in that chip's matching ingredient book. This pumpkin ingredient doesn't give you a special action, but it will elevate the value of your potion, allowing you, during a later phase, to move the patient closer to your market stall. The lead ingredient, on the other hand, does give you a special action. Each time when you place one of these lead ingredients in your bottleneck, you can consult the ingredient book and see how many gold pieces you're allowed to take. For this value 2 lead ingredient, I'm allowed to take 2 gold pieces from the supply. In the addendum, you can find a list of all ingredient books with their specific effects, but during this explanation, we will encounter a few more of these ingredient books. If you draw a white chip, you will place it in the white area at the bottom of your flask. The value on the white chip will be used to determine its position on the track. For the first white chip, you will place it on the first, second or third position of the track that matches the value on the white chip. So here I would place it on the second space of the track. From then on, you will use this same method of placement, using the last placed white chip as a starting point to count the chip's new position. So with a new value 2 white chip, I would now place it 1, 2 in this spot of the white track. If you must place a white chip on this spot, you must immediately choose one of these 2 options. You can either move your market stall 1 space closer to the patients, or you can upgrade a black chip in your flask. I will show you how to upgrade a color chip later during the explanation. If you must place a white chip on one of these explosion spots, your flask will explode. I will show you what happens when your flask explodes and how and why you would move your market stand in a minute. You can keep drawing chips from your bag until one of 3 things happens. There are 3 color chips in your bottleneck. You decide to stop drawing chips to finish your potion, or your flask explodes. Let me show you what happens in each of these 3 situations. Whenever there are 3 color chips in your bottleneck, you are no longer allowed to draw any more chips this turn. You now add the value of all 3 colored chips in the bottleneck and add to that the value of the last white chip on the track at the bottom of your flask. It doesn't matter if this chip was not drawn during this turn. In this example, you have a value of 2, 4, 5, 7. You use this value to move the patient on the game board that number of spaces on the track in the direction of your market stand. In our example, it means I'm allowed to move this patient 7 steps in my direction. More on moving patients and market stands in a minute. After you move the patient, you move the 3 color chips from the bottleneck down to the body of your flask, making room for your next turn. Then the other player takes a turn. When it's your turn again, these colored chips are still part of the potion that you are currently brewing, and more chips can be added later during turns. Just beware that you never remove the white chips between turns. They stay on their space at the bottom of your flask, increasing the chance of an explosion with each turn that you take. At any time, before you draw a new chip, you can decide that you have finished your potion. You then, just like before, move the patient a number of spaces in the direction of your market stand, equal to the sum of the value of the chips from the bottleneck, and add to that the last white chip. So here I would move the patient 2 spots in the direction of the market stand. At this point you don't move the chips from the bottleneck to the body of the flask, because you will not draw any new chips during this phase. Your opponent, however, can keep taking turns until he or she also decides to stop brewing or until his flask explodes. Speaking of explosions, the moment that you have to draw a chip and place it on the track and it will cover up one of these explosion spaces, your flask will explode and your turn immediately ends. You move all the chips from the bottleneck to the flask itself, and your potion is now considered to be completed. You are no longer allowed to take any more turns during this phase, so you can no longer add ingredients and you are not allowed to move the patient. On top of that, whenever this happens, you must choose one of 2 penalties. You either place half of your acquired gold pieces back into the supply, so here I would place 3 gold coins back into the supply, or you move your patient in the direction of your opponent's market stand. The value that you use to do this is equal to the number of gold coins that you would otherwise return to the supply. So here you would have to choose to either place these 3 gold tokens back to the supply, or you move the patient 3 spots in the direction of your opponent's market stand. This could even result in a patient reaching your opponent's stand. If this would happen, then treat it as if your opponent moved the patient himself. This ingredient book is not part of the ingredient books that we are using right now, but I really want to show you this book because when you use this book, it shows you that the blue ingredient will now activate when your flask explodes. So here it would mean that when my flask explodes and I have this ingredient in my bottle, you would move it to the bottleneck and you would be allowed to move the patient that number of spaces, the value of your colored chip, in the direction of your market stall. Even better, as part of this ingredient's activation, you don't have to take any of the 2 penalties. So players would take alternating turns until both of you have finished their potion, either voluntarily or as a result of an explosion. Then it's time to move to the next phase, the aftermath. However, before we move to this 3rd phase, I want to explain a few of the things that we just saw in more detail. Moving a market stand, upgrading chips, and moving a patient. Let's start by moving your market stand. At the start of the game, your market stand is placed on its starting position. During the game, you will move your market stand when you encounter one of 2 symbols. Let's start with the best of both symbols. Whenever you encounter this symbol, you can move your stand that amount of spaces in the direction of the patients. If, however, you activated this symbol, you will move your stand back that amount of spaces in the direction of your starting positions. So patients will have to walk longer to reach your stand. Let's now take a look at how to upgrade your colored chips using these 2 symbols. During the game, you will have the opportunity to upgrade the value of your colored chips. There are 2 symbols that allow you to do this. When you use this white upgrade symbol, you can place any of your colored chips that are currently in your flask, in the bottleneck or in the body of the flask, back into the supply and exchange it for a chip of the same color but with the next higher value than the one you just removed. You can't skip values, so a value 1 chip would become a value 2 chip, and of course a value 2 chip would become a value 4 chip. This newly acquired chip switches places with the old one. Let's take a look at how this would work during the game. Imagine that I draw my next chip and I draw this one. It's a red value 1 chip. Following the rules, I place it on a free spot in the bottleneck of my flask, and then I look at that ingredient's ingredient book to see what its effect is. In the case of this red value 1 chip, I'm now allowed to upgrade any value 1 chip from my flask to its next level. So I could upgrade this value 1 green chip for the next one of a higher level, and that would be this value 2 chip. The value 2 chip then takes the place of the value 1 chip. The other upgrade symbol is this one. It's a golden arrow on a black background. When you activate this upgrade, you can only upgrade black chips from your flask. So when I activate this symbol, I would now be able to upgrade my level 2 black chip to a level 3, again replacing the old one with the new chip with the new value. If you cannot complete an upgrade because you don't have a matching chip, you take 3 gold pieces instead. If you cannot complete an upgrade because there is no matching chip left in the supply for the one that you want to upgrade, you have to first try and upgrade another chip, following the normal rules. If this isn't possible, you again take 3 gold pieces instead. I already told you that you will move patients closer to your market stand because this is how you will get the opportunity to treat them and win the game. Now, how do you do this? There's always only one patient on its way on the path. This is the active patient, and he starts rather indecisive in the middle of the path between the 2 quacks. During the game, this patient will move between your and your opponent's market stand. But from the moment that he reaches one of both stands, he has decided who may treat him. This is how you will be able to place patients on the treatment track on your side of the guild hall and eventually win the game. But first, some basic rules. There can never be more than one active patient on the path. Only when a patient has decided who may treat him, the next patient can move from the park to a path. You can only move a patient at the end of your turn in which you placed at least 1 new chip in your flask. When you are allowed to move the patient, there are 2 possibilities. Either there is a patient on the path, which means that you can now move it closer to your market stand. If there is no patient on the path, you will now place the next patient from the park on the track. You place it on the first spot of your color as his first movement. When the patient has reached your market stall, you will place it on your market stall tile. The patient has chosen you to treat him. You will now move your market stall 2 spaces back on the track, making the way between the park and your market stall longer. If you still have movement left to move a patient, you may now take a new patient from the park and move it along the path in your direction. So it could happen that at the end of your turn, there is more than 1 patient on your market stall tile. Let's take a look at an example of how this could happen. At the end of the turn, so you will be adding the value of the 2 color chips in your bottleneck to the last placed white chip. Here I would have 4, 5, 6, 7 movement points. I will now use these 7 movement points to move the patient on the track. After moving the patient 2 spaces in the direction of my market stand, it reaches the market stand, so I will place it on the tile itself and then move the stand 2 spaces back. I only used 2 of my 7 movement, so I have 5 movement left. I will use that 5 movement to place a patient on the path in my direction, moving him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, again reaching my market stall. I now place the market stand 2 spaces back, and now I have used up all my movement. And this results in 2 patients that have chosen you to treat them. After you have finished moving the patients, you can now take all the patients that have chosen you to treat them and move them from your market stand to the treatment track. You place your first patient on the space closest to the park. All other patients that you treated are placed in the next free spot on the treatment track, following the arrow. Each time that you place a patient on the treatment track, you will activate the bonus that is visible on that spot. When taking a look at these bonuses, you can see a black meeple and a white meeple. The black meeple means that this is a bonus for your opponent, while the white meeple gives a bonus to you. However, it's not easy calling them bonuses, because they are benefits for your opponent and negative things for you. Placing a patient on space 1 and 2 gives your opponent a free upgrade of a black chip. On space 3, you have to take a value 1 white chip and place it in your bag. And when you place a patient on the 4th or 5th space, your opponent may take any value 1 or value 2 chip and place it in his bag. Placing your 6th patient on this last spot will immediately end the game. Now that you have learned a lot more details of how to play the game, and all players have finished taking turns brewing their potion, I will take you back to phase 3, the aftermath. This symbol resembles ingredients that are triggered during this aftermath phase. They will not provide you with an action when you place them in your bottleneck, but now would be the time when you activate them. For instance, this blue ingredient, if I take a look at its aftermath effect, it tells me that if I have one blue ingredient, I'm now allowed to move the patient one space into the direction of my market stall. If during this aftermath phase you would activate an ingredient, like here in this case, in which turn order could matter, then the player who is behind will activate the effect first. During the market surveillance phase, the player who last completed his or her potion, either voluntarily or as a result of an explosion, will now determine the value of the bonus on the top card of the round stack. All these cards have a scale on them. You will notice that one of the sides on the scale already shows a bonus. The idea being that you now decide how much of the bonus markers you place on the opposite side of this bonus. To do this, you take the 5 bonus markers, the 3 upgrade chips and the 2 value 1 gold pieces, and you now place any number of these 5 markers on the other side of the scale. This is the value that you are giving to that bonus. If during your first games you are unsure of what value you should give to a bonus, you can take a look at the bottom right of the round card and place those bonus markers that are printed on the card on the other side of the scale. Once you have placed the markers on the scale, your opponent now takes one of the 2 options. Either he takes the bonus or he takes the markers. Once he has chosen, you get the other option. If part of your bonus are these upgrade arrows, you are allowed to use multiple of those arrows to upgrade the same chip multiple times. So you could use these 2 black upgrade arrows to upgrade this black ingredient from a level 3 to a value 5 chip. If you collected some of these nuggets, you can now exchange each of them for a gold piece from the supply. Each of the round card has a different bonus. The card either has this lightning symbol, which means that you immediately take the reward and then you discard the card, or the card can show you this one-time symbol. You will place a card like this in front of you and you can use it once during the game. This bonus would allow me to take 3 color chips from the body of my flask and place them back into my bag, so I could redraw them during a later turn. As I told you during setup, you will always include the number 7 round card when choosing your 7 round cards for the game, and you will place it on the bottom of the round stack. This is the round card that is always used during the last round of the game, if no player has treated 6 patients before that round. This round card does not have a scale on it, but it shows you an action that both players can use during their turn. You can even choose to perform this action multiple times. When performing this action, you pay 3 coins to move the active patient 1 step in your direction. If during this last round your flask would explode, you also have to move the patient 7 steps in the direction of your opponent, on top of all the other facts that you deal with when your flask explodes. Now that you made your first potion, It's time to go to the market and buy some new ingredients in the buying new ingredients phase. Both players can now buy new ingredients. The player who first finished brewing gets to go first. You can buy more than one ingredient, but only one of each color. You can find the price for each ingredient in its matching ingredient book. A higher value chip is of course more expensive than a lower value chip. You pay for your ingredients by using these gold pieces. Remember that the only way to get new gold pieces is by placing black chips in the bottleneck of your flask. When a certain ingredient is depleted, you can no longer buy those ingredients. Any ingredients that you buy are placed in your flask and will end up in your bag to start a new round. So here I would use these gold pieces to buy new ingredients, and I could maybe buy for 7 gold pieces a red value 1 chip, or I could buy a green value 2 chip. And of course I would be able with 11 gold pieces to buy a level 1 red chip and a level 1 green chip. It's very important to know that at the end of the round you are only allowed to take 1 gold piece with you to the next round. All other gold pieces are placed back into the supply, so be sure to buy enough ingredients. Now that you are well stocked on new ingredients, it's time to end the round. At the end of the round, you would take all the chips from your flask and any chips that you placed off to the side, and you would place them back into your bag. Of course, the patient and the market stand stay on the same position. If you have more than 1 gold piece, you will return the other pieces back to the supply. You can then reveal the next round card, and then the player who is behind becomes the new starting player for that round. To determine who is behind, you follow these rules. Normally, the player that has the least number of patients in the guild house on his treatment track is behind. So here it would be the yellow player. If you both have treated the same amount of patients, the player is behind if the active patient is on the side of his opponent. So here the patient is on the blue side, so again the yellow player would be behind. If there is no active player on the path, then the player who valued the round card during phase 4 by placing the bonus markers on the card is behind. As I told you at the start of the video, the game can end in one of 2 ways. The game immediately ends when a player has treated his 6th patient, placing that patient on the last spot of his treatment track. Or the game will end at the end of the 7th round. Whoever treated the most patients is now the winner of the game. If both players have the same number of treated patients, the winner is the player on whose side the active patient is now. If there is no active patient present, a showdown takes place. Each player places all their chips in the bag. Then both players simultaneously draw 1 chip from their bag, one by one. The first player who has drawn chips with a total value of 10 is declared the new master of the guild. Now that you know the rules, we can go back to phase 1 and take a look at the bonuses from the coins and how they can help you during the game. For your starting game, you will use the silver and the gold coin, but after a few plays you can choose to exchange one of these 2 with the bronze coin. Let's take a look at the bonuses on each of these coins. First up is the silver coin. Place this coin, when it shows you this side, on the first explosion space in your flask. If you have to place a white chip on this space, there will be no explosion. Leave the coin here until the end of the round. The other side of the coin gives you an immediate bonus of 3 gold pieces that you take from the supply. When using this side of the gold coin, you immediately place it underneath the bottleneck. You may at any moment during or at the end of your first turn remove all the white chips from this white track and place them back into your bag. After that, you would remove the coin from your flask. This side of the coin allows you to move your market stand 1 space closer to the active patient. When you use this side of the bronze coin, you immediately place it underneath the bottleneck, and at the end of your first turn, you may remove 1 colored chip from the bottle and place it back into your bag. You then place the coin back on the well space. When you use this side of the bronze coin, you again place it underneath the bottleneck, and at the end of your first turn, you may choose to use one of these two benefits. You may either move the patient 2 steps in the direction of your market stand, or you may upgrade 1 black chip in your flask. You then again place the coin back onto the well space. Remember this wooden piece, the mayor, that we placed back into the box at the start of setup? She comes into play when using this dragon's blood ingredient. You can look up how this works in the almanac if you are using that ingredient.
This was all you need to know to set up and play Quacks of Quedlinburg the Duel. If you liked this video, please click the like and subscribe button, and you can always follow Meeplecare on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube. This was Meeplecare, taking care of your meeple needs.